They are destructive monsters, say opponents. Small, floating, glorious cities, say supporters. Whichever. Cruise ships and the industry of which they are part tell us about the way the world is changing. If the stereotype of the cruise ship passenger is an older American, that too is changing. But what are the other destinations of the future, and what other parts of the world will see a fresh interest in cruise holidays? Maarten Tromp is independent cruise consultant to governments and companies. He believes the answer is simple: Africa.
There are whole swathes of Africa, Central Africa, Western Africa, which are relatively unexplored from a tourism point of view. And I'm sure it will explode on the market.
And why do you think cruise ships will be attracted to West Africa?
Well, at the moment, very few cruise ships go to West Africa. Very few. It's almost a transit point between South Africa and the Mediterranean and the Baltic. The area is just unknown. And the things we hear about Africa, a lot of these things are almost negative things. But the opportunities in Africa are enormous.
George Argiopoulos runs Cruises International in South Africa.
I think that Africa is still a hidden gem. There are certain challenges in terms of infrastructure and accessibility to some incredible natural sites. And of course, we have the typical safari, but can you imagine being able as part of a cruise to spend a night with the gorillas, for example? And history, culinary, can all be offered in Africa. So there are certain challenges with visas, with infrastructure and some others, but this is also changing very, very fast. And I must say that I see more enthusiasm from other nationalities than the traditional kind of white market taking to cruising. Sometimes they need maybe a little bit more convincing and explaining again, all the merits and the benefits and the safety aspect is also quite often brought up of cruising. But once they try it, they become our best marketeers. The word of mouth is incredibly powerful.
I believe in Africa as a destination, but I also believe that Africa will become a supplier market. People forget, when they look at Africa, they look at a collection of countries in a continent. But the forecasts are saying that in 2025 there will be 1.5 billion Africans. If you then consider that these 1.5 billion Africans are younger than your average Chinese citizen, you've got an enormous wealth. You can see it. You can see it happening.
And where are they going?
Worldwide.
People that, almost irrelevant of their age, are far more active than they were in the past. So even our kind of off-the-ship activities involve or offer a lot of active excursions, from bicycling and scuba diving. You can be as active or as inactive as you like. So we have kayaking, we have canoeing, sailing, water ski. We really offer a very vast variety of very, very active excursions.
The whole market at that end has changed. Your parents, let's say your grandparents, my grandparents, they were very happy if they were going to cruise to see nature through binoculars. If you were to go on the cruise ship and not go with a Zodiac to the beach, to the savannah, to the jungle, you can just as well stay at home and watch it on television.
So whether they're African or Chinese cruise passengers, what they want from the cruise experience, may change. What the future holds is forecast by Carolyn Spencer-Brown of Cruise Critic. For her, the future means younger passengers, more adventurous destinations.
The younger market wants more authentic experiences on land. They want more recreational opportunities. They don't want to necessarily run on a treadmill in the gym. They want to ride bikes through the Pampas or kayak around penguins. They really want to have memorable experiences. And the challenge for the cruise industry has been that it's, by and large, been relying on the same old kind of tours and programs that it's been offering for the last 20 years. So you need to create activities and experiences off the ship, and that's critically important to attract the really active I'd say active under 60 crowd.
Today, bigger is not always better or even more attractive. Mass tourism may mean bigger boats providing a floating Las Vegas experience, but there are also elite small ships which are destined for places like the River Amazon.
Well, the most exciting niche of cruising right now is the small ship segment, particularly the soft adventure and expedition cruises. We're seeing expedition cruises just go crazy, and part of that reason is that, the old days, the lines that did soft adventure, you had your beds bolted to the floor, you slept in a twin bed, you showered over your toilet. It was nothing fancy. And what we're seeing now is that lines are coming out and investing in ships that are much more comfortable, perhaps not over the top crazy luxury, but luxurious enough, and taking people to places they really couldn't go to otherwise. And the two really hot spots we're seeing in particular are Antarctica and the Arctic.
In Hong Kong, on a characteristically hot day, I'm told about an expeditionary cruise to one of the coldest places on Earth, a representative of Crystal Cruises.
We have a Northwest Passage in 2016 and 2017. It's a 32-day sailing. This year it will be from August the 16th to September the 17th. It will start in Anchorage and go north through the small Canadian islands passing Inuit villages, through Greenland and down to New York, with New York being the most southern port on the sailing.
Who goes on these expedition cruises?
Actually, we have a wonderful mix. Some of our world cruisers who have absolutely done everything and been everywhere this will complete their piece of the puzzle in the world. It's an itinerary that's not done very frequently, so it's really very, very special. There's others who want the adventure of going to a remote place. Very interestingly, it's unlike any of our other sailings in that it's an expedition style, meaning that some of the places are so remote that they don't have a place to dock, and the only way to get ashore might be through a Zodiac in a few inches of water. So on our Northwest Passage, we also, with every booking, we also offer a complimentary parka and the opportunity for boot rental.
But as the passengers get ready to don their insulated coats and boots, this trip has already triggered a heated debate about the ethics of this kind of wilderness cruising, as Canada's CBC has reported.
The Crystal Serenity will sail from Anchorage, Alaska through the Northwest Passage, then down to New York City, and it will become the largest vessel and the first of its kind to make the fabled journey.
The month-long cruise is years in the making. Meticulous planning for one of the most remote and least mapped regions on Earth. And on board, polar navigation specialists and ice spotting radar and lights, all to avoid a catastrophe.
But safety is only one of the issues the voyage raises. There's also environmental concerns and questions about the impact that a cruise this size will have on the small Arctic communities it visits along the way.
These sort of places like Alaska will be explored better, deeper, more detailed than it is. At the moment, everybody there is just scratching the surface.
And damaging the surface?
Yeah, to a certain extent. I mean, if you look at these great ships, and I'm not anti-big ships at all. I've worked with big ship cruise companies, but it was one of the things that I noticed in Alaska. You'll see a cruise ship lying there, and a cruise ship can't switch its engines off because it makes the electricity and the water and all these things. But you do sort of start getting concerned if you see that you got the fumes from the chimney, the smokestacks go up, and you think to yourself, okay, maybe 80% of the ships are very careful and filtering and cleaning, but you only need 2 or 3 ships, maybe older ships, and ultimately you're damaging the nature.
So, new passengers, new worlds, at least for the passengers. And as cruise ships occupy more and more of the water of the earth, they're accompanied by argument, sometimes fierce, about the value of cruising. Next time, I'll be in Liverpool, where thousands turn out to greet the return of the big ships as the city once again becomes a cruise destination. I'm Philip Dodd for the BBC World Service, and I'm going to ask these questions from the Gabon in Africa to Liverpool in England. But it's not only in cities that there's a tension between economic development and ecological sustainability. Wilderness cruise tours are on the increase, trips on the world's great rivers, on the Amazon and the Mekong River. Cruisers now beginning to explore the extremities of the Earth, the Arctic and Antarctica. The desire for cruise exploration started around 50 years ago, according to Edwina Longsdale, Managing Director of Monday Cruising.
When Lars-Erik Lindblad in 1965 took the first tourist explorers to Antarctica and then to the Galapagos. So he began opening up wilderness areas of the world to adventurous and inquiring people. And his premise was that if you show people just how magnificent this planet is, then that will raise their levels of respect for and passion about the planet. And that's expanded very slowly with different vessels, big expansion in the poles, so Antarctica and the Arctic. The Galapagos obviously is a very exciting destination. Alaska, which has really opened up to the mainstream market, has got a hidden expedition alternative where you'll do something quite different, quite a different experience, where you probably won't see another ship or another person for all the time that you're away. And what we're seeing is that whilst that market has been there for some while in quite a small way, that all of a sudden a number of cruise lines are looking to that particular sector of the market and are building ships specifically for it. So there's a big new build programme going on now.
Carolyn Spencer-Brown of Cruise Critic knows that the passion for cruise exploration is generating new business for shipbuilders.
Antarctica is the top one for sure. It's so popular that cruise lines are actually sending ships back to the shipyard so they can have ice-strengthened hulls added to the ship, which is no cheap experience. They're creating new ships just for that market.
So, in the short term, there are economic benefits in the exploration vogue. But what's the ecological impact in places such as Antarctica?
The rules are so stringent, and there are actual sensors on how many cruise ships can go in and how many people can go in. And cruise lines are taking cruise ships in, and they're not even full because they're not allowed to have more people. And they're really trying to be as careful as they can to preserve the environment.
Ricardo Rura is a senior advisor for the Antarctic and Southern Ocean Coalition, an environmental body.
Well, the scale of cruise tourism in the Antarctic is quite small for global standards, but it's quite large for the Antarctic in terms of the number of ships involved, the number of tourists transported, the landing made at particular locations, and so on. And at the moment, numbers vary from year to year, but we are talking about something between 25 and 50 ships going to Antarctic every year, doing a total of perhaps 250 or more trips in total, and perhaps over 30,000 landings.
And the problem is that it's all happening on just 1% of Antarctica.
The issue has to do with the concentration of passengers, where people are taken, what they do there, how frequently they go. Often the tourists are taken to see wildlife colonies, typically penguin colonies. And that the tourism season often coincides with the most sensitive part of the reproductive cycle of penguins, meaning that they are, to a degree, especially early in the season, penguins might be exposed to that level of visitation. There could be disruption. So that's one issue. And the other issue, perhaps broader, is also to do with the general presence of people and ships and various kinds of interactions with wildlife and issues of noise, for instance.
Antarctica's already open for the cruise business. But what about new destinations? In the African country of Gabon, the government is trying to grasp that environmental sustainability can be economically valuable. Maarten Tromp advises the government.
What the government is doing now, they're looking and considering a backing, state backing of a cruise project in Gabon, where from Libreville, the capital, the marine parks and the nature parks will be visited by ship. Now, the interesting thing there again in Gabon, you can with cruise ships and zodiacs, you can get from the ship to the jungle, from the ship to the savannah. You can go to islands. It is. You can visit everything and get a really good flavour of the country.
And tell me what form this eco-luxury cruise is likely to take.
Well, it's most likely to be an expedition type ship. The type of ships you'll find sailing around Galapagos, the type of ships you see sailing around the Seychelles, maybe the Maldives area. But it's people who really want to go and explore.
What are the dangers of this development of new kinds of cruise tourism?
Well, the dangers of that sort of development is if you don't think it through, if you don't train the local people properly, if you do not respect the nature as it is, if you allow tourists without rules to go anywhere they like, that's when it goes wrong.
So, the cruise holiday business is being turned upside down, like the world of which it's part. But what exactly does the cruise holiday offer that other holidays don't? What does the future hold?
For a long time, there's been talk about ships that operate completely independently of the land. Motherships with smaller ships operating from them. We're sort of going there to an extent now with the 6,500 passenger ships that are being launched. So that's one direction. That's very much the resort, the Las Vegas at sea type thing.
Right now, we have a large contingent of guests who are on board the ship who come on board every January for 3 months, and a good percentage of those guests don't even know where the ship is going.
Whether passengers are travelling east or west, the ship experience itself is of overriding importance, as Rick Spath of Crystal Serenity explains.
Well, I'll tell you something. In my capacity being cruise director on board a ship, it becomes more and more of a challenge because we are now attracting more of a diverse demographic than ever before. And knowing that everybody comes from all walks of life, it's difficult to schedule your entertainment that's going to make everybody happy.
The things that we feel the lack of in our daily lives can be purchased on a boat. Safety and community so important in a world where loneliness is a social disease. I spoke to some passengers docked in Hong Kong. If I understand it right, you come on a world cruise each year, so you're an addict.
I hadn't had it put that way before, but yes, I'm a sailing addict, a cruise addict.
And so you're away for 102 days
Yes.
each year. So for a quarter of the year, a third of the year almost, you're on the sea. Is it being on the sea that matters to you most, or visiting the places?
Well, the sea, as you know, is ever-changing. I could never be bored on board.
What do you think that cruises offer you that other holidays don't?
Friends, you make friends, and a lot of the same people come back, and you become good sailing buddies, and it's just so much fun.
You sailing on your own?
Yes, I am.
So is part of it that it is a community?
Oh, indeed it is. And as singing, sailing alone, I feel so safe.
When you do a land trip, you go to a hotel, you check into a hotel, the person behind the counter, they only know your name because they see it on a computer. That's the last time they know your name. When you cruise, and you never meet anybody staying in the hotel, but when you cruise, you unpack. Within days, you know all the staff. Within days, you know many of the passengers. You develop friendships and relationships that you're going to have the rest of your life, and it adds to the travel experience. Getting to know these people. We have people that we met like 8 or 9 years ago on the World Cruise. We sit with them at dinner. We sit with them every day. When you're at home, how many days a week do you see your best friends? Once, maybe twice. Here, you see them every day, and it just enhances the experience.
You're a real family man, aren't you? Because
Well,
this is a kind of cruiser's family.
A cruise becomes your second family.
For a cruise passenger who knows the business, he's perfectly clear that the staff, the crew, are at least as important as the passengers.
You know, it's all about the leadership and the culture of the company. I mean, I've been in the hotel business since 1979, and it's all about the people. I mean, the nice rooms, the cabins, the facilities, that's taken for granted, that's expected. But what the guest remembers is not so much the facilities as they remember the experience. And the experience is all about the staff and how you treat the staff and the culture of the company. And that changes everything. That's why you have this sense of family. You can't just create that in a moment.
So, the employees are part of this community, but a special part. Once, cruisers were a byword for labour exploitation. Johan Oyen is chair of the International Transport Workers Federation.
If you go back to the ships built in the 70s, even into the 80s, you had one mess room for the crew, one mess room for the officers. You had maybe a little day room with a TV. You had cabins, and the bathroom facilities in most of those cabins were community bathrooms in the halls. Until today, where you have big new ships, they actually have, so they say, a cafeteria, almost a restaurant for the crew, where they go and eat whenever they like. There are bathrooms in the cabin. Most cabins today are either one-berth or two-berth cabins, where in the 70s and 80s there were a lot of four-berth cabins, and even something bigger than that.
If passengers like the idea of the ship as community, are the crew part of it?
It is yes and it's no. Mixing with passengers, no. It's gotten more strict than it used to be, in the sense of you have a lot of lawsuits from passengers that say that the crew did that to them or didn't do or whatever. So the split between passengers and crew is that the crew interact with the passengers in form of work, and after they finish their work, they don't see the passengers, so the passengers don't see them. It is a hotel in many ways, that floats around a cruise ship. But it's also a village, small town. And there's a lot of things going on. The only thing is that you have a little bit like a TV series, upstairs, downstairs. You have the people working downstairs, you have the people who are upstairs.
I met 3 Filipino crew members relaxing on a sunny day in St. Mark's Square, Venice. In a world moving east, the last word belongs to them.
Most of the cruise ship now is like state of the art. They're improving for the crew and for the guests also. The best thing working in the cruise ship, you see the world for free. Like right now, we don't pay anything, we don't cash anything to see this place. And the worst thing is we're away from home, from the family.
For the BBC World Service, I'm Philip Dodd, and today's programme was produced by Mark Rickards.